Morocco have become one of the most dangerous, most fearless, most respectable teams in the world of football. And as they take on France today in the quarterfinals, they are not the underdog, they are not the luckiest team, to be playing in the quarterfinals. They are not the team that will need luck to win against France because they are a very good team, very formidable team, and they have absolutely everything it takes to beat France and go on to win the World Cup. But of course, you talk about Morocco, you ask yourself, why is it that we only have Morocco in the quarterfinals or at this stage of the World Cup? Yet we had 10 teams for the first time ever, African teams, 10 African teams qualify for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Personally, I didn't think that we would have even more teams qualify out of the group stages, but fortunately, we had 10 teams get out of group stage, and they deserved it because the likes of Cape Verde, DR Congo returned to the World Cup after 52 years. Were amazing. They, stood toe to toe with the best teams in the world, and they showed that they could perform. But then get to the round of 32. Knockout football is very brutal. It's very tough. You have to come in, you have to be very good defensively, you have to be very good tactically, you have to be able to adapt and adjust so fast. You have to be mentally good. We saw how our teams cracked under pressure and could not win games past the 80th minute. And I think for me, that was a very, very big challenge for African teams. And so you have to ask yourself, what makes Morocco so dangerous and what makes them so good that even this, expanded tournament, 48 teams, very tough teams, very tough opponents, but Morocco is still here competing and taking on France. And like I said, they're among the contenders to win the World Cup. First of all, you have to look at one of the things that makes Morocco very unstoppable, very dangerous. Morocco doesn't let setbacks hold them back. I'll give an example. The game against Canada in a round of 32, Canada were very good tactically. They played good football, stopped Morocco from passing the ball. Like defensively, they were superb, but Morocco stayed calm. They kept doing what they do best, kept pressing, Canada. And then eventually in the second half, I think in the round the 60th minute, Canada cracks, makes mistakes. And then Morocco takes advantage of that and they score. When he scores the first goal, he scores the second goal. And before you know it, Morocco have 3 goals and they win the game. That is proper management, game management that most African teams struggled, to do at that stage. For example, you look at teams like Senegal. Like I mentioned, Senegal should have been in the round of 16 or even go ahead to play in the quarterfinals because they have one of the best teams in the world. In fact, they have one of the best teams, better than most European teams that are still at this competition. But why they could not manage the game? Imagine you're leading Belgium, you're in the 80th minute, 85th minute. We think Senegal are going through, considering that they had had a very poor group stage performances. And then they concede 3 goals in the last 10, 15 minutes. That was very poor from Senegal. And then you look at, of course, DRC. I would forgive DRC because after 52 years, yeah, they played good football. They went toe to toe with, with Portugal in the group stages, and then England dominated England almost for 80 minutes, and then conceded the last, 2 goals from Hurricane. I would forgive them because at that stage, definitely with young players, a new crop of players playing for the national team that have just been recruited, there was lack of experience to manage the game at that stage. After 2 years, you're rusty. You don't even know what it takes to play at that stage. But and of course, I do not want to undermine England's talent and Hurricanes, role in that game. But again, you ask yourself if DR Congo were mentally prepared for that game, they could have won the game and probably would be discussing something different right now. But it didn't happen. And so for me, those were some of the lessons that most African teams need to learn, especially from Morocco, how Morocco have been able to manage their games, throughout this whole tournament, how they stay disciplined, how they stay, playing as a collective unit, supporting each other, throughout the whole game. They don't switch off, they don't make mistakes. I think the only mistakes they made was against Haiti in the group stages, but they learned from it. But they've been unstoppable. You cannot talk about the goodness of Morocco and why they have been able to reach this stage, without looking at the systems, without looking at the structures that they have in place. Morocco are one of the few African teams that has taken so much time to invest in their national team, in their football, not just in their national team. Competing at this stage, by the way, I don't think that they just woke up and, collected players and, just added in a few pieces and here they are, they're competing with the best teams at the world stage. No, they have done an incredible job investing in youth, in coaching, in putting up structures that support the national team to be able to perform at this stage. And one of them for me has been like recruitment strategy. Their recruitment strategy has been top notch. You look at this current squad, it has foreign raised players. Four of them, in fact, were raised in the Netherlands, including Ashraf Hakimi, their top scorer in Ismail Saibari. All these players were raised outside of Morocco, but they have a system that seamlessly integrates these new players and they're able to perform so fast, because they build systems that are not just for one player or two players or individuals. No, they build a system that even if these current crop of players get out of the national team, the young ones can come in, or whoever comes in, whoever we bring in will be able to fit into the system perfectly. And then, of course, you can talk about, putting structures in place without looking at their youth structures. Look at the under teams, the under 17 teams that last year won the African Cup of Nations. Look at the under 20 that won the FIFA World Cup under 20 in Qatar. So that speaks a lot about Morocco, that they have been able to treasure football, but on top of that invest in the systems that have seen them perform, because at this level it's not about talent, it's not about passion, it's about the systems, it's about the investment, it's about what you do right to make sure you keep competing at this level, and that's what Morocco has been able to do. And of course, when I talk about your structures, I am glad that Uganda is already on that path, because last year we also had our under 17 compete at the under 17 World Cup in Qatar, and the phenomenal performances from our young boys. But for us, the biggest challenge is that we do not have a pathway for these young players transition to the national team. There is no continuity. When you look at the coaches, you're always, reshuffling, like bringing in new coaches every now and then, and that creates instability. That creates, an atmosphere that doesn't allow players to grow from one level to another. Morocco does it differently. Look at this World Cup itself. They have a new coach. The new coach was brought in 3 months prior to the start of the World Cup. Everyone thought, okay, Mohamed was not going to perform well with the team, thought things were going to change, was going to disrupt the chemistry and the cohesiveness of the team. But look what's happened. Because he found a system. He found players who already know what they need to do, who understand the system, and it has been very easy for him to do his job. But look at the rest of the African teams. And in fact, when I talk about the having one of the best coaching programs and best coaching systems, I would proud Senegal. Senegal have done it incredibly well too. You look at when RCC left in 2021, when after winning them the Africa Cup of Nations and taking them to 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar, and then they brought in the current coach. But I think for me, the biggest challenge for Senegal, obviously, it has to be with how prepared they were for this tournament. Did the chaos and drama that unfolded after the finals, the Africa Cup of Nations finals, disturb them? Because even the group stages they were not performing well. Obviously, for us, we analyze the games, we analyze, these players, we analyze the teams, but we're not privy to what happens behind closed doors. There's so much that happens behind closed doors that we don't know, and that in fact affects the players and the team. But that aside, for me, I have to let African teams, those that have been eliminated, they have had the opportunity to play at this World Cup, that if they want to compete globally, if they want to compete with the best teams in the world, they definitely have to, you know, invest in these systems, invest in their youth structures, invest in the coaching programs, nutrition, sports psychology, prepare players mentally so they're able to compete at this level and not quack under pressure like we saw African teams losing games they should not have lost. And most importantly, it's not even about the stadiums. Football is more than the stadiums. You can have the best facilities, the best stadiums in the world, but when everything else is not working and you not go very far, in football in terms of development in terms of competing. And I think Morocco are the blueprint. Morocco are showing what African teams need to do to get to perform with the best teams in the world. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, going into a pitch, stepping on the pitch, they're taking on France. Personally, I think Morocco have achieved it, but obviously, I would love to see them win the World Cup. That would be like, I don't know, the best feeling ever for Morocco.